The New York Giants are in a very interesting situation going into the NFL draft. They have a depleted roster, especially at the receiver position, and have the number 6 overall pick. Their presumed starting quarterback in Daniel Jones is coming off a season-ending ACL tear, and he has a cap hit of about $48 million according to Spotrac. What makes this interesting though is the fact that Joe Schoen and the Giants made his contract such that they can get out of it at the end of the season for a manageable dead cap of only $22 million. And I know in the past this may seem like a lot, but given that Russell Wilson's dead cap is almost double, and that Stephon Diggs has a dead cap of $31 million this season, it's quite reasonable given how much times have changed. There have been rumors that the Giants have buyer's remorse with Daniel Jones, and that they're looking to draft a QB, possibly by trading up. But I'm here today to tell you that that will not happen, and that they're just trying to fool the media into having the draft board fall their way. First and foremost, the worst thing the Giants can do is draft a quarterback. Their roster isn't a quarterback away. They're in much need of talent, and especially at the receiver position. However, having the number 6 overall pick is kind of awkward for them. My draft prediction right now is that the Bears will take Jaden Daniels coming off the Heisman. I'm kidding, the Bears will take Caleb Williams. And then Washington will take Daniels at 2. At 3, however, I think the Vikings trade away their future to the Patriots to select Drake May. At 4, the Cardinals will take Marvin Harrison Jr. And at 5, I think the Chargers will make amends for getting rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams by drafting Malik Nabers. But then that leaves the Giants at an awkward position at number 6. They could take Joe Alt, but they have Andrew Thomas who just signed an extension. They could also take a quarterback, but the only quarterback left would be JJ McCarthy. And I personally think that although he is good, he's not worth a top 10 pick. I think he's more of a mid to late first round pick. It would fit well on a team like the Raiders, who already have players like Devontae Adams, and they have a great system that can help him shine. Therefore, they would be left with Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers. And although they're both great players, I think taking them at 6 would be kind of a stretch, especially with Rome Odunze at 6, which is really high for a wide receiver when you realize that Jamar Chase was taken at 5, and this would also be the 3rd wide receiver off the board, which would be kind of a stretch. Therefore, I think the Giants are in a tough spot at 6 because if the board falls the way I think it will, then they are just out of the range for the top 2 wide receivers in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers. Therefore, I think the Giants will actually trade up to either 4 or 5 to draft one of those 2 wide receivers. I know Monty Ossenfort and the Cardinals have said they'll take calls when on the clock for their pick, but I don't think Ossenfort will trade that pick. I think they'll draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I know there was a video that recently came out of Ossenfort working the draft last year, and you can just see how zoned in Ossenfort was when he was trading his pick to the Houston Texans, and also how impressed Michael Bidwell, the owner of the Cardinals, was in the back. That rush of adrenaline that Ossenfort had is the pinnacle of becoming a general manager in the National Football League, and I'm sure he wants to replicate that this year as well. But I just don't think it makes sense for the Cardinals to trade back, unless they have some sort of an agreement with the Chargers to come back and trade the 5th overall pick. This is because if the Cardinals trade back at 4 and someone takes a QB, I think the Chargers will then grab the opportunity to take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5. And then the Cardinals are essentially screwed because their fan base will really want Marvin Harrison Jr. and they won't get them. And this is especially the case when you think that with Marvin Harrison Jr., the Cardinals can be a real contender with him and Kyler Murray. So since I don't think the Cardinals will trade back, I think the only way that the Giants get their desired wide receiver win is by trading up with the Chargers and getting Malik Nabers. And if you think of it, it's kind of like deja vu, because again they'll be drafting the wide receiver of their future out of LSU. Therefore, I think to secure the wide receiver of their choice, the Giants will trade up to 5 with the Chargers to draft Malik Nabers. And the Chargers at 6 will then trade down again for someone to come up and draft Joe Alt or even Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers. I personally don't think the Chargers will make the pick at 6. Odunze doesn't make sense because they already have Quentin Johnson who kind of plays like him. I also don't think they'll draft Brock Bowers given that he's not really a blocking tight end because of his small size, and And I think the Chargers are going to be a run-heavy team, like the past Jim Harbaugh teams, like Michigan or even the 49ers. And Joe Alt doesn't make sense because they already have Rashawn Slater at left tackle. However, I do think they'll take an offensive lineman, and I think they trade back from 6 and probably trade up again afterwards with the Bears at 9 to take someone like Talisia Fuagwa out of Oregon State. I then think the Chargers will use their additional assets to trade up in the first round again and draft someone like Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, probably somewhere in the 20s. Therefore, I think the Giants are in a tough spot at 6 because they're just out of range for the best 2 wide receivers in the draft. If the board falls with Caleb at 1, Daniels at 2, May at 3 to the Vikings, Marvin at 4 to the Cardinals, and Neighbor at 5 to the Chargers, which is more than likely. And so because of this, I think the Giants trade up to 5 with the Chargers to grab their wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. I think that the Giants have been leaking to the media that they're interested in a quarterback, hoping that someone like the Broncos will get nervous and trade up ahead of them to draft a quarterback. Because if that happens and 4 quarterbacks get taken before their pick at 6, then Neighbor will fall to it. However, I just don't think anyone will trade up to draft JJ McCarthy with a top 5 pick. And thus, to secure their wide receiver of choice, the Giants will probably trade up to 5 with the Chargers, but rather than draft a quarterback, I think they will take Malik Neighbors. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed.